יש לי מקום בעולם ירושלים של זהב, יש בורא עולם בעולם המלאכים סובבים אותך, עם ישראל אחד וכולנו אוהבים אהב, אין יש בעולם כלל, שמע ישראל שם אחד.
Yetzer, he says, when Hashem said, Anochi, I am Hashem, I see that like the first of the Ten Commandments, I am God. And he says, why didn't he say Ani? Because Anochi means, with the letter Kaf, means Ke Ani. It means, I'm something like this. Such a Gavaldic teaching that, what does it mean to really reveal self? And even for Hashem, it's always a process. It's always, what I can tell you, what I can give to you now is a part of it. And even Har Sinai, which is the most total revelation we can have, is still not a static, finished thing. It's still Ke Ani. The letter Chaf is so important because it's the Kaf HaDimayon, the Kaf of comparison, and Dimayon also means of imagination. Every time we express ourselves, so that impenetrable mystery of the soul is taking on some kind of an image, but what's so important is that the receiver know that it's an imaginational image. It's something important. It's a whiff. It's a taste. It's a smell. It's genuine, but it's not totalizing, and it doesn't finish or end what it means to connect. Particularly in the Har Sinai experience, he says that the Jews saw the voices and heard the lightning. The Torah deliberately uses a mixed sense. Usually lightning is seen and sounds are heard, meaning to say that one way I understand this is that seeing is a static thing. It's a picture that you see all at once. Whereas hearing is sequential. It comes sound after sound. And so the beauty of it is that even the grand picture of things is still heard. It still has an aspect of being sequential, of not being the final picture. And the sequential side of things, of sound, is not just like, well, I'll never know anything. It contains also seeing. You have a sense that you have the wholeness of the person for real in their partial expression also. So you have a sense of stability in relationship, of love and connectivity that is for real, that is stable, and yet the dynamism of more getting to know more and more. Even the word Torah itself, lehorot, it comes from the word to teach or to show. So like, I'm showing something, but it's not a word that means like to finish or to give a final totalizing sense of things.
The way I think of art is a creative expression of human beings expressing some sort of sentiment or thought they have about the experience of being a human being. So I think like art, if it's okay for me to just lay out just a little bit of what I take for granted, so like we have a common language. You know, there are particular arts that involve craft, technique, but in art, in saying, as humans, we celebrate the five senses not just by how we experience them, but humans like to say things about the five senses. So for example, to eat something and enjoy something that's pleasurable because it's tasty is not art, it's an experience. But if a human being consciously wants to create an experience based on that and their sense of that, that's art. Like to write a novel, is to describe from a human's point of view the experience of being human in a particular context. So I think art is what humans have to say about being human, in short. That's what art is. Just like the Gemara says, "Kishem shepartzufeim lo shavim zu lazu, kach da'ateim lo shavim zu lazu," or something like that. That God made multiple people because He could have done the whole thing with one person. Indeed, we started off with one human made up of male and female. But I'm saying, why are we all necessary? Kishem shepartzufeim lo shavim zu lazu, kach da'ateim lo shavim zu lazu. That just like their faces, everybody's face is different. Even twins, identical twins, as they go through life, they don't look exactly the same. Just like everybody is different, also their minds, their dot, their awareness, their sense, their experience of reality is different. That's of tremendous value, I think. The Gemara says that that's a marvelous thing, but the way I understand why is because God is infinite, and God expresses Himself through creation. The only way we can relate to God, and indeed we're supposed to, is God is bigger than creation, and we're creatures. So how do we relate to something beyond us? By trying to relate to Him the way He expresses Himself within this creation and modeling ourselves after that. Mahu afata. And so God expresses Himself in a way through creation. If you want to get close to God, you have to engage Him through the creation. God is infinite. So how does infinity express itself in a finite world, a finite creation? Through infinite variation. Each one of us is carrying an expression of God that nobody else can express. And that says a lot about the glory of God. But that means that each one of us and our sense of who we are and what this whole thing, that's an expression of God in the world that wouldn't exist otherwise. So for me, that means that part of this relationship between the Creator and the creation is that there's this need to express oneself. That just like God expresses Himself in His creation, we can only express God by being true to what He invested in us. And if we each have a piece of God, so to speak, in our soul, or who we are, that can only be expressed through us in our story, then it's upon us to give that a voice. That's what God's doing when we do that. So that's how I see art.
Yes. Ein tzayar ke'elokeinu. The Gemara, the Talmud in Brachot says, it brings the pasuk, Ki mi Elohami baladei Hashem u'mi tzur zolati Eloheinu, which is from the Shira of Chana, if I remember correctly, where she's thankful for being blessed with the son Shmuel. And Chazal say, En tzur is en tzayar ke'eloheinu, shetzar tzura betoch tzura. Like we just make an external shape, but God is able to make a shape within a shape. So that's a very nice connection. Tzur also means rock, it means strength. There's a nice play on words there. The concept of Yetzer as Yetzirah, as creativity, right? You mentioned a creativity of the mind, a mindfulness, but the concept of Yetzer as creativity, the drive to create, is really what drives me. There's a verse which is explained in the Rabbeinu Bachye, where he says, "Kabed et Hashem mehonecha," which I think is from Mishlei, from Proverbs, because that's what he usually does. And he explains, "Mimad dehenyecha," from those things which God had blessed you. With those things, you're supposed to honor God. So he says, if you're a singer, then if you have a good voice, you should be a singer. And by expressing that creativity that you have, you are serving God. And so on. If you have a good talent for writing, you should be a good scribe, and so on. Make a nice Sefer Torah, whatever it is. So I just find that tapping into your creativity is part of our avodah. It's part of our mission. Whatever it is that your calling is, your creativity is, it's something that needs to be done. It's part of the definition of the world. It's Chazal says, "Le'ovdo b'chol levavechem v'chol nafshechem," is b'shnei yetzarecha. You need to serve God with both of your inclinations, which we say, it's a very interesting way to look at it. I think it's Midrash Tanchuma explains that the verse in Bereshit which says, "Vayar Elokim et kol asher asa ve'hineh tov me'od." God had observed everything that He made, and behold, it is very good. And the Midrash explains, Tov is Yetzer HaTov. It's the Tov. The word Tov simply means the good inclination. Tov me'od ze Yetzer Hara. that very good, extremely good, means the evil inclination. And that is a very counterintuitive idea to a world which has been saturated by, let's just say, Christian influences, where we look at bodily pleasures and desires as sinful, as evil. Because it's pointing out that these are the forces of creativity which drive the world. And so it's an innate part of who we are and what we are supposed to be doing, lechatchila, as we say. This is not like, okay, you have to succumb to it because you have this, and like creativity is the drive of being. It's self-expression, and so it's a very important thing to tap into that, to be sensitive to that, and to really do your best to express yourself with your Yetzer.
Where did the doodles start for
It
you?
started on the pages of the Gemara I was learning when I was growing up. That's for sure. Mostly doodles of cowboy hats and guns and swords. And from there, I guess it progressed to regular pieces of paper, faces and mustaches and hands, and trying to wrap my head around the world around me in line form or color form, or translating my eyesight to paper.
And you have the chassid with the little candle. Where did he emerge and from what?
You know, it's hard to actually say, but he emerged at a time when I still am finding myself, or searching for myself. This little Jew with a beard and payas who always has a candle lit on his head. I guess through the years I realized maybe that's what I want to become in some sort of way. It happened in the past 7 years. I'm 26 right now. It happened since I was 19 or 20. I think it has come about, and he gives me strength. Well, I would say Chassidus is sort of bringing the Kabbalah, which is super lofty, down to a sort of human level that any simple person can grasp. And sometimes, you know, in life you have all these emotions and things that are very hard even to grasp, to get your head around. And when you, I guess, make a symbol or scrawl or scribble or write on a wall, it could help you get those emotions down on a practical level. It sort of is a very physical and visceral level of art that anyone can sort of understand. It's very down to earth.
There's a tselem and then there's a tzura. And a tzura is akin to, like, I believe, an outer form. So based on your lave and what's in your lave, that casts, actually, that creates the reality that you're looking at, and then that dictates how you'll relate to it. So that's your dot, essentially, your interface between your mochen, the high ethereal parts of you and your capability, and then your midot, the lower sfirot, are mediated through your dot. So your lave, whatever you have in your lave, that's what you're going to see. Your reality is immediately, directly linked to your lave, and I think that's what it means.
The way that the Torah influences creativity is seen nowadays on a lot of artists, but I think it's a Torah that's still progressing, because the whole Torah is still progressing. So the more artists that use Torah in their art, the more we'll see a progression of this. I'm familiar with a number of artists who use letters and the shorashim of the letters, and besides for scribal work, which is also an art, of course, but they're using the meanings of the letters to make paintings and to figure out the roots of the word in a deeper way.
I think that's what God wanted the most out of His creation. There's a Gemara in Chagiga that says that the earth made a kal v'chomer by itself. There was a moment, there was a blip where it became alive. It says, Yismach Hashem b'ma'asav. The Sar Shel Olam, the angel Matat, sang that God should be joyous with His creation when God witnessed that the earth expressed its own awareness. That creation is not a puppet show that you're molding everything. What He wants for it ultimately is to be alive, and that means truly to be independent, to be conscious, to be sentient. We all know this from science fiction, you know, like the desire for artificial intelligence, you know, whatever it is. So in our tradition, there are moments in Ma'aseh Bereshit where God was thrilled because the creation itself manifested as sort of its own personality. That I believe we have a tradition in Maaseh Bereshit that God was mitzapeh. He anticipated, he desired that this earth, that the creation should be alive.
Girl walking, or is the whole world moving and she is just still aloft? But yet she's wading through with a loyalty, a conviction, a fortitude that neither any force in this world or another universe can stop. She's donned and enthroned in love, and she just projects love. And carrying her child, she has more strength than a pride of lions, and more finesse than a flock of geese. And I could go on, but we need more feathers to make more quills, to dip our ink, to praise the girl with a babe in arms.
The theme of the project is Yetzer, and of translating that as thought forms. How do you process your thought forms? How have your thought forms been in the sort of isolation phase, and how have you worked with that in your creative expression?
When it comes to my work, I'm so lucky that I don't have to think. I see something and I'll try and get the image straight away. So I'm not even thinking about composition. I'm not thinking about emotion or anything. Obviously, if the face or the thing that I bring out, that I trace or bring out or emphasize, might be something that I don't want to see, so I won't. But obviously, it's obviously tapping into a massive subconscious level that I'm not so aware of, that's swimming around, that we're swimming in, right? Because everything's having synapses and connotations and synchronous. We're constantly synapsing our brain, putting things together, tying things together, I suppose. So yeah, it's easy for me on this. The trick is I don't have to think. I've seen the guy who, what was the illustrator for Hunter S. Thompson?
Yeah, Ralph Steadman.
Now I saw him one day, I was watching a documentary, and he was throwing Egyptian ink on this paper. And then he was creating his own chaos, let's say, and then seeing an image, which happened to be a crazy dog or whatever. I'm lucky, what I do is not new, everyone's been doing it, just that technology changed so it can be done much quicker. But we are hardwired to see faces and everything, clouds, marble. So I'll see something and then I'll just draw it out. So I'm very lucky, I'm not thinking about composition too much, unfortunately. But the inherent beauty in everything is what I think is the clarion call there.
So my great-grandfather came to New York from Syria in the 1920s. So I don't have personally in my family relatives who came from Syria, although all of them did on every side. There are people in my community who immigrated as recently as 1990. So having grown up around these people is still something that's very relevant and alive in our daily life, I would say, and behaviors. There are some people in my family who will, in the beginning when I started using Arabic in my work, looked at it and were very confused because there's this sense in immigrant culture of wanting to divest from their original culture, and especially in America, like that whole, but we want to just be good Americans, we want to speak English right away, and because of that I lost my Arabic. I know that I'm probably the first generation in hundreds if not thousands of years in my family not to speak Arabic, so that was one result of that, but another was their own sense of wanting to distance themselves from themselves. So people reacted in the sense of like, why are you putting Arabic in your artwork? Nobody wants to see that, nobody wants to buy that, nobody wants to look at this, like what's the point? And trying to discourage me from it, or I had people saying off comments like, oh, we're waiting to see, like as I was training myself in Arabic calligraphy and just getting started and learning it, and I would be posting a lot of things on Instagram like, oh, look what I the progress that I made today, or this like letter forming that I'm proud of, and I would have family like getting back to me, them saying things like, "Oh, we're waiting to see when you're going to join ISIS." Like all the negative comments that, because those sentiments exist, is the very reason that I'm working on this at all. Because I very much feel that if a select group of bad actors happen to use a script, that doesn't mean that they own it. It doesn't mean that they get exclusive rights over the usage of it. And the more we divest from it, the more we're giving it to them. So because of that, I'm working on it at all, but I didn't feel that people in my family really understood that. But then on the other hand, you get a lot of support from family and community. There was community members who were more recent immigrants that when I asked them for their advice on things, or primary sources, interviewing them for their stories and then showing them the finished artworks and gifting them artworks as like a thank you for helping me in this journey, a lot of them were very gratified and thankful and excited to see their stories and their personal life represented in art, because again, it's not something that was usual for this community and this story.
So Jerusalem must have been a natural home for the sort of hybridization in your work of classic and contemporary and language and Arabic and Hebrew.
Yeah, I think that's part of the culture of this city, which is so multi-layered and has so much heritage in it and people from every Edah. And at the same time, Jerusalem is in a moment now, in Israel really, where they're at once looking back and taking ownership of people's cultural heritage and being proud of it, especially Mizrahim. And then at the same time looking to the future and trying to modernize, and they're cleaning up, and they want to, like building their light rail, all these constructions. They're moving ahead as they're looking back in a way that I'm trying to do with my work as well. So it is a very natural synthesis, and I've always found that my work had a very good reception here, which made it really easy to make the decision to come and live and work in the city. I don't think that there's a way to pin down Jewish art, almost in the sense that it's very hard to define Jewish history in a vacuum on its own, because Jewish history is the history of the world, because Jews have been spread out in diaspora for thousands of years throughout the whole world. So the way that our history is the history of our host country, or the history of the whole world, so too our art. Like somebody came and looked at this work in progress today and said, "Oh, it looks like graffiti." And I'm like, "Yeah, because I was raised in Brooklyn and I grew up around that stuff, so that's going to come out in my art." Is graffiti and street writing Jewish? No. But am I a Jewish person creating art? Yes. So like, is it Jewish now? I don't know. I couldn't say. I don't know if it's necessarily useful to have a definition of Jewish art anyway. Like, do Spanish people be like, "What is Spanish art?" Or are they just like, "I'm a Spanish person, I'm making art"? When you pinpoint something and put it in a specific box and define it that way, you're also limiting it. So maybe it's better if it is an open question, because it gives more option for things to be included, or for the definition to morph and change, and for new ideas to breathe life into the whole question. It's almost better to not have it strictly defined. For me, religion is that way too. Like, it's not the very modern concept and construct of orthodoxy, reform, conservative, all the labels that people will put for what defines your religion and how do you define your religion to yourself. Like, when you have to answer those questions, it also puts you in a box. So I don't think it's useful, and I don't think it's realistic with religion or with art. We're all individual.
Okay, you'll see when you come into my studio space that on the wall that kind of like bridges to the kitchen, there is something about Geniza. And one of the first pieces of energy, I guess, like just like something that felt like, oh, I can get involved here. Like, of course I tried with my emotional aid kit and like to fit other work that I've been doing into Jerusalem. Like, of course that was my mind. And like the Dove of Inner Peace was my transition project. So I was carrying it with me wherever I went. And obviously a white dove is gonna ignite in Jerusalem. Like, what else do you think the biggest symbol here is? Like, nice one, clear. And like I had a medicine woman in Canada at this powwow. When I told her the vision I had, she gave me such like a bracha, like, if you follow the dove, like, don't worry about bringing medicine to other people. If you bring it to yourself, the other people will learn how to bring it for themselves. She totally like blessed me, and I was like, how did you know I was talking about a white dove? And she's like, well, there's one over your head. And so for a year and a half, I was following this dove project and it wasn't catching on. I was like, but I had a medicine woman, bless it. Like, what do you mean? I should be famous and rich and whatever you think that happens in order to reflect that you're onto the right thing, like you're doing the right thing. So we live in a society where money and fame and affirmation, like endless affirmation, shows us we're on the right track. And I guess through whatever training I have accepted on my way and been blessed by, to have at this point of transition in the universe, it's like like hang on for dear life, pray with all your might, and like maybe something good will happen to you. Like, not you explode apart, and maybe something good will happen through you. And that feeling is like really just like an activating electrical current where you feel the feeling of being in exactly the right place at the right time, like coordinates, like click. Massive conceptual art project, we can look at it that way, like a global conceptual art project where everyone participates with their creative spiritual practice. So I can frame it in that way. We can frame it on so there's a lot of traditions that use the elements I'm going to bring into it. And so to come back to my original story, sorry I don't lose the thread, it just takes me a while. The one place I felt to get involved with a new idea, not just this dove, was at the Kotel. Now, we did not leave our remaining temple wall to look crumbly like there's a remaining temple. So many cultures have chosen to meditate on destruction, on crumbling, on bringing it down, which is what's going to happen to the system. The dismantling of the system leads to a decay, and that leads to fear. What we have is a quite well restored, respectable wall. Like, you literally are just walking up to a wall, and you're like, it's just a wall. But it's like, the field is like wild there. It's wild. And lately, I mean, God could only have blessed us with this gentlest awakening. So this project, called Binding Light, is born out of my time that I spent at the Kotel trying to solve the problem of what happens when the notes fall out of the wall and litter the floor. And to get close to the wall to pray, you have to step on other people's prayers. Eventually, I realized, I don't know why I'm having this idea. I don't know why I'm in Jerusalem. I don't know why I'm so connected to Judaism right now. And I don't really even get into the whole Kotel thing so much, but I must do something about this. And I started this Geniza campaign, and I had the vision last May probably, and it took time. And then when I was back for this Hanukkah, I was like, you either do it now or you don't do it. So I basically got permission from the office. I started in this kind of gentle way. And I started in the summer planting the seeds, being like, hello, I am a patron of your arts, and I'm noticing you have a prayer problem. It's not a garbage problem. You have a prayer problem, which is people step on each other's prayers. And that is upsetting to someone who prays. Even though I don't put notes in, it's just when you watch someone that's in that prayer, it's the first step. It's a first step. And so that's really the biggest learning. So all of Hanukkah, rain or shine, I kept my commitment. I went there, I stitched that thing, I spoke to people, I had a Geniza can, I had all sorts of things. And a lot happened, and it's a beautiful story, beautiful time. And I put together a PowerPoint presentation, which I never do, and I sent it to the Kotel people, and I'm like, can we have a Geniza box? And it just says, respecting other people's prayers, right? Is actually a mitzvah, something like that, right? To give the Talmud on it, or to give, but if you pray before someone else, if you pray for someone else first, your prayers are more likely to be answered. I learned really that writing out your prayer has power. And so nothing happens with it because of male politics. I had to talk to the rabbis, and it's I got sent on a religious adventure for a Geniza box, Geniza box. And I was even don't have anything to do with me on it. Just please, for those that are aware, have a Geniza box. We can't. Where do we put it? They don't. I was you've got to be kidding me. I am now spending my time fighting for a Geniza box in the women's section of the Kotel. How did I go from I wasn't in Mount Shasta, but it feels that way. The top of Mount Shasta to here, the bottom of what are you talking about? And I was super triggered and I worked through it, and I talked to the people that I talked to, and Corona hit. Like, just whatever. Life has changed. Let's just refocus our energy. In that space, I transitioned from the dove, and I can kind of show pieces around it, from the dove into the notes, and I created my first note projects there, and it's also where I began doing High Torah. And High Torah is where, I work with the Parsha of the week, and bring in kind of like the highest, like this, like the most associative relationships. So I'll do it this week about the Meraglim, like, and kind of relate it to what I'm feeling in the energies of the world around. So Kotel, this still started at the Kotel, and I had thought of it for the Bar Silo, but this idea of really introducing to Jerusalem specifically prayer, like for a non-Orthodox audience. Like, we have a divide here of people that are Orthodox and people that are not, and it's like, if you are in Jerusalem, you are a spiritual person, you better get a spiritual, whatever. I invite you to a spiritual practice, but like, you're here because you know how to pray, and there's no mistakes in this time. And if we focus our energy, like, and we believe, we will bring a new day. We are that good, and these times are real, and da-da-da-da-da. So I came up with this one, and the idea was, you write a prayer and you add it onto a chain. And it's related kind of to like the Kabbalistic notion of the golden thread. And I wrote these prayers to start it off. I wrote them at the Kotel, and now I have no idea what they are. Like, total mystery to me what I wrote. But I have these threads, and these are a few other ones. And, it was rainy all winter, strangely enough, so every project I was going to do worked with paper or really light materials. And so it was either windy or rainy, and so it was never right for me to contribute there. So I eventually, for a lot of reasons, pulled my energy away. Then Corona happened, and now I'm kind of over here. So with that space, I have started to shift the project. It's now, again, it is about writing out a prayer, and there's different ways into it, but it's really, you can see one behind me, like kind of floating there. It's really about taking some time, taking some focus, taking some energy, and writing out a prayer for the world. Like, really a prayer for your life. So this is the way that I invite the project, like, invite people to start it. So write a prayer for yourself, like, what do you want in this life? Don't be, like, just what do you want? And if you're shy, like, give gratitude. Like, give gratitude, like, thank you for this life and this opportunity. I'm humble before you. And, give praise, like, everything is amazing. Like, all the blocks that I need to create my dream are right in front of me. I just need help seeing them. And then go into your prayer. Like, I want to, and for me, I want to awaken creative spiritual practice in the world. Like, give yourself permission to pray and beg and create with a sense of totally connected consciousness. And know that you are good, and know that you are divine, and stay humble, like, stay connected. And your creative practice, there's a million ways in, and here's a starting point. That's my project. So the starting point is, like, ask for what you want. Pray. Like, give it up. I want this. So I want that. And so the way that it works is you take some pieces of paper. So again, there are many different styles. As you can see, I'm playing with, this will be a spiral that goes up. You could thread it and do something kind of nifty like this, or stitch them together like this. But I also, because again, I was saying that I'm not really a nifty person, one of the things that I was doing back there is really just taking a strip of paper, writing whatever I want on there, folding it up, and then just tying a string around, and then just kind of giving a pull, okay? And then double knotting it, and kind of building a chain from there. And again, however you build your chain of prayers, and that was like an original name, but I like it better, binding light. And now I'm using what I would like to imagine as like the color of techelet, so for the tzitzit, and then hang them so that they can either be outside in the wind or inside in your home or in a park or things like that. Binding the prayer. So that's where this is called binding light, because for me, and I think for many people, certainly in the Hasidic practice and practices of the New Age and Kundalini Yoga and many other sacred traditions, we can define awareness as light. And a prayer is connecting us to our highest awareness. We're calling it in and we're channeling that, and we're asking to bring it out into the world. So this is specifically filled with what I want to put out in the world. And when I see it, it energizes me. The vision that I had was like, oh, wouldn't that be nice? Like, if you're marching and you're protesting, or even like those days are over and the protests have passed, you look up, especially after coming out of Corona and being all like afraid to go on the streets, and you come out and you see like people are praying for each other or praying for themselves or praying for a better world. And you know, put out the prayer, I pray that everyone prays for good things for everyone. Like I pray that we can all get along. Like I pray there's room for all of us to be in sacred alignment together and get everything we want. Like that would be great. Elna Rafana La. So it's like let's heal our world together. Let's beg for Or Chadash, like for those that work with Or Chadash, or new insights, enlightenments, awakenings, whatever tradition you're working with, to just figure something new out. Okay, namaste.